Hi, this is Martin for Revelation Software, and welcome to another video in my series looking at getting started with Open Insight. First of all, an apology to all of those people that have been chasing me to continue with this series. It's been ages since I did the last lesson, and I apologise for that. I got bogged down in creating my own contact manager built within Open Insight. Massive learning curve for me, but horrendously fun. Thoroughly enjoyed it and absolutely amazed at what I've been able to achieve with Open Insight as a non-developer. All credit to the guys that create this product. If anybody wants to see what I've been doing, give me a shout. I'll be more than happy to do an online demo and just share what is possible with this tool set with very little knowledge in a very short period of time. In addition, we had Christmas and the New Year. I had a horrible cold over the Christmas period. Thankfully, all of that is now behind us. We are using the contact manager in the business on a daily basis. It's running my life. It's great that it's a system that has been built to my own business practices, so really pleased with that. And I'm now caught up and back into these tutorials. So let's get on. We're going to be looking at QBF in this lesson, so let's open up our clinic application, the forms designer, and the patient entry window that we've been working with during this series of tutorials. Now, those of you that are observant and that have been following this series will notice that my window is now ever so slightly different to that which you've been working with. While I've been away, I've moved down these all of these entities. I've introduced a group box at the top here and dropped on some buttons to give myself a little bit of a button bar. The buttons that I've got on is one to close the window, to clear the form, to delete the form, to delete the record, and obviously the QBF buttons that we're going to be using later within this particular lesson. So if you want to follow along, this is basically how I created those buttons. I selected the button from the control panel here and dropped it onto the form, resized it, positioned the button wherever I wanted it, and then set the properties. Now I'm just going to delete that one. I'm going to cheat slightly because what I actually did was to create the first button the way that we're going to create this button now, and then I Control C to copy, Control V to paste, and then just simply move that into the location I wanted it in. It's much easier than resizing lots of buttons and bits and pieces. Just a little tip for you. So let's go into the properties of that button, and we need to give it a name. So this is going to be button_save using my naming convention. We are not going to exit the application. We're going to use the pipe, and we are going to save this record. Nice and easy. And the bitmap entity, we don't want to use obviously the exit. We want to use a save one, which I don't have in my system. So what we'll do is we'll create a new entity, browse my system. Now underneath where I've got Open Insight installed, I've got my clinic data folder where I keep all of my resources for this application. Change this to PNG because all my bitmaps, my graphics are PNG files, and it's the save one that we want. And to keep things consistent and so that I can find it within the repository easily, I'll keep to my normal naming convention. So we'll OK, and just make sure we got the save button selected. It's a 3-state button, and we'll go into the events because obviously we need our button to do something. Just a straightforward quick event. We don't want to close the window, which is a quick event I used for the previous button. I want to write the row, so we'll select that one and OK, and we are done. That's how I created those buttons on that particular top area of the window. Some of the initial QBF buttons have got some code behind. We'll look at those in just a moment. Right, so once you've got your form in the same state that I've got mine, let's go ahead and look at the QBF functionality. So, QBF is a way of querying your database using the form, and the easiest way is for me to test run this form and to show you. One of the brilliant things about Open Insight and QBF is you don't actually have to do anything. You've had this functionality in your application since the beginning, assuming that you had the menu bar open as a QBF option. And what we can do is, before I actually run that, I'm going to bring in a record so you can see it clearing. Underneath QBF, we have the ability to initialize the form, to execute the request, to navigate the results, and also to view the results in the table. And we've also got some shortcut keys which you can change if you want to. All of that functionality is available to you out of the box with no coding, nothing for you to do whatsoever. So the first thing we'll do is we'll initialize the window, which clears all the prompts, and we'll go into the surname and we'll put our little string that we're going to look for. Now there's an operator and obviously what we're looking for. There are a number of these operators that you can use, and some of them are detailed here. So we've got the equals, the one we're going to be using during this video. So the equal sign with either the search criteria in or quotes or not in quotes, it's up to you, and that's going to return, if we were to put Smith, all of the Smiths in our database, and that's the example we're going to use. We can use the greater than and less than, also mixed with an equal sign, to look for values greater than or less than. Or we can use the greater than and less than sign together to give us not equal to something. So if we were to do not equal to Smith, we're going to get all of the people in our database that haven't got the surname Smith. Or you can use the square brackets to get or to do an operation with beginning with or ending with, or the two square brackets together to give us contains. I find this really useful. I use it quite a lot in my contact manager. So give me everything that contains MIT is going to give you everything with Smith, with MIT in the middle of it, Smythe, Mitchell and Samittel. So you can see how that works. And also there is an OR operator. So Smith or Jones will return all of the Smiths or all of the Joneses within your database. All of the operators are detailed within the Open Insight help file, so I suggest looking in there for more information. Right, so I've got equals Smith, and we'll go in and we'll execute that, and Open Insight immediately returns the results to us in a QBF browse list 1 of 2. And I can then use the navigation buttons to move around within that browse list. So I can go to the next, or I could press F3, so I've gone to Fred, or I could go to the previous, going back to Bill. You could just move around. Alternatively, what I can do is to use the table option, and then that will give me the browse list in a table down here. Now, interestingly, I've got a browse list with 2 records. However, I just happen to know that I've got 3 Smiths in the database. So I've got Bill and Fred, the 2 that were found, and Abigail. So why did we not find the 3rd record? Well, it's quite straightforward. When we initialized our form, what it did is it removed all of the prompts, but the combo box is defaulting to Mr. and the radio buttons is defaulting to male. So when we actually did our search, we only got the 2 records, if I execute that, with Mr. and male in. I didn't get Abigail because she's a Mrs. and because she's a female. So we need to go ahead and fix that if we're going to be using QBF within our application. It's fairly straightforward. For the combo box, all we really need to do is to remove the default selection. So when it initializes the form, it just puts a blank in there. Nice and easy. Radio buttons are slightly different in that the system is expecting one of the options to be selected. So at the moment we're defaulting to male. So what we'll do is we will remove the unknown part, so it's just blank. And we'll make the default selection unknown. So now when it refreshes the form or initializes the form, it's going to still select unknown, but there won't be any button value for it to look up on. So we'll OK that, and this time if we test run the form and we initialize it, you'll see that title is now empty. We switch to unknown, and if I do equals Smith and we execute that, we now have a browse list of 3, and if I do F3 we get Bill, Fred, and now we get Abigail. So that's something to bear in mind if you're going to be using QBF in your application. If you've got prompts that are going to be pre-populated with something like a title or like a radio button, then you do need to do something so that they do clear out, either within code or the way that I've just done for some of the simple prompts. Most people that are working with a Windows application, whilst they'll be happy enough to have the menu drop downs, they really want to have buttons. In Windows applications, I very rarely go into menus if there's a button option available to me, because it's just so much quicker and easier. It's one click, not multiple. So within the example here, I've created these buttons, the QBF buttons, and we'll look at how I created these and the code, etc. behind them. The first one I created was the QBF initialize. If I just open up the properties and we go into the events, you'll see that there's two events. There's a script and a quick event. The script event runs first, but the quick event that I chose was on the click, send the message to the window, and the message I want to send is QBF initialize. Now that's a quick event that's pre-built into the system, and you'll see how I did that in just a moment. I'll pick that in just a moment. And on the scripts, what we're saying here is simply set the enabled property of the QBF Go button, because at the moment that particular button is disabled when the form runs. And another button that I've done something a bit different on is the Go button, or the one that executes the QBF lookup. On the events here, on this particular instance, I've chosen QBF run, so run the lookup. But on the scripts, what I'm saying is disable the Go button and enable the browse buttons. Obvious reasons why I've done that. And the rest of the buttons are pretty much just the quick event. So I've got a button here that I haven't finished off. So let's just open up the properties. Now this is going to produce the QBF table, and it's going to display the QBF results in a table. So I need to select my button, and the button that we want is QBF table. You can see I've got all of the other buttons that I've created. The number of images is 3, and the event that I want to call is going to be a click event. We're going to send the message to the control or the window, and in this particular instance is going to be the window. And the message that I want to send is going to be one of the QBF messages. If I just hit Q here to jump through, you can see here that I've got QBF absolute, close, first, initialize, all the ones that I've used previously, but the one I want now is QBF table. So we click OK, and that's all there is to creating that button so that we can then use the QBF functionality within our application. Very quick, very easy. So this time, if I test run our application, I'll bring in record number 1 just so that you can see it initializing. We'll QBF initialize, so initialize the form, it's all cleared. And we will add in our equals Smith, and the buttons here are disabled because at the moment I haven't got a browse list to browse. The Go button has changed from disabled red to green, so I can now do something. We'll hit that, and then that will enable the browse buttons, and we've got our browse list 1 of 3. And it's much easier now to navigate around the list. And I can also get our browse table with our 3 records now. So that's all great. Now there's a little bit more tidying up you should do, and I have done within my contact manager. And if you want to see how I actually handle this, then just drop me a line, email, or pick up the phone and ask me, and I'll be more than happy to set up an online demo and run through with you. But what we need to do is, we are now at the last record in the browse list. So why have I still got the next and the last buttons enabled? Really, I want to disable those. And in the same way, if I go to the beginning of the browse list, I really want to have the first and the previous buttons disabled as well. It's just a lot nicer for the user. In the same way, when I was to save a record and it was to clear the form, there's nothing for me to delete, there's no record for me to delete, so really that needs to be disabled. Now you can enable and disable buttons in the way that I showed you just a moment ago. It's very, very easy. It's amazing how many applications I see where the buttons are all enabled, and it doesn't really make sense to users, because if I'm at the end of a list, I shouldn't be able to browse further. So please think about how you're using your buttons and the states of those when you're building your applications. Right, so that was looking at using QBF within your applications. Remember, the QBF functionality is available off of the menu, out of the box, so long as you've got that menu turned on and you haven't deleted this out. If you don't want to use QBF, you can delete it using the menu builder. But all of the QBF functionality is available to you out of the box with no code, with no effort. Really nice facility. And then we also looked at creating a very simple button bar and putting the QBF functionality on that button bar. So I hope you found this lesson useful. I will not leave it as long for the next lesson. I'm not quite sure what we'll be looking at, but watch out for that coming very soon. I hope you enjoy working with Open Insight as much as I've been over the last couple of months, and I'll catch you in the next lesson very soon. Thanks for your time. Bye bye.